The Alien War Council chamber was filled with the sound of shifting armor plates and murmurs, as representatives from dozens of species gathered around the grand table to judge the lone human seated before them. Chains bound his arms to the chair, yet he sat straight-backed and calm as though the steel links were no more than decoration. His face was marked with scars from battles long past, and his eyes glowed with a strange intensity that unsettled even the most hardened veterans of galactic war. Across the chamber, the commander of the Zaltar Dominion leaned forward with a mocking smile, curling over his reptilian features, and his voice cut through the air like a blade when he asked the question that would echo across the stars. "Tell me, human, how many lives have you taken? What is your kill count?" The chamber fell silent as every alien waited for the reply, expecting hesitation or boasting. But what they received instead made the air itself heavy with dread. The human marine tilted his head as if weighing the meaning of the words, then answered in a voice quiet, yet sharp enough to chill the blood of everyone present. "This year or just this planet." The silence deepened and some of the younger delegates shifted uneasily, their scales and feathers ruffling in instinctive fear. The alien commander blinked once, then narrowed his eyes, studying the man before him, trying to see if the statement was some elaborate bluff. But the human's expression did not waver. His tone carried no bravado, only the weariness of one who had counted kills for so long that numbers no longer mattered. In that single moment, the council realized the gulf that separated humanity from all others. This was not a soldier trying to impress his captors, this was a predator stating a fact of life. The Marine's words hung like smoke in the chamber, and several delegates whispered among themselves, recalling stories of human resistance across the outer colonies, where even unarmed settlers had turned entire assaults into bloody defeats for invading armies. The Zaltar commander forced a laugh, hoping to dismiss the answer as exaggeration, but the sound was hollow and strained. One delegate from the insectoid Kether clicked his mandibles nervously and muttered that perhaps it was true. Perhaps the numbers of human kills stretched further than any of them could comprehend. The human's gaze shifted across the table, and wherever his eyes landed, the aliens felt as though he could see through their armor, through their false confidence, into the marrow of their bones. He had been forged in wars on death worlds where the environment itself tried to kill those who lived there. Every scar told a story of survival against odds no alien could endure. He leaned forward ever so slightly, chains clinking as he spoke. Again his words slow, deliberate, and terrifying in their simplicity. "I did not keep count for pride, I kept count because each number was a face, and each face was a reason to keep fighting." His voice carried the weight of 1,000 silent graves, and the council chamber seemed colder for it. The Zaltar commander shifted uncomfortably but pressed on, demanding to know how many planets had fallen to this one man's hand. The human smiled faintly, not out of joy, but out of bitter memory, and replied that one man alone could not topple planets, but one man could ignite a fire that spread across systems, and that fire was humanity itself. Every soldier, every civilian, every child raised on Earth learned not to surrender when the world tried to break them, and so they did not bend, before alien armies either. The silence after his words was unbearable, and it was broken only by the low hum of the chamber's energy shields. The alien leaders who once saw humanity as fragile newcomers now began to understand they were seated across from something ancient in spirit, even if young among the stars. A predator that thrived on adversity, a fighter who carried the memory of countless battles etched into his soul. And in that moment, though they held the human in chains, it was they who felt captive, bound by the gravity of a truth they could no longer ignore. This was only the beginning of their fear, and only the first crack in the illusion of control the council thought they held over humanity. The chamber did not settle after the human's reply. Instead, it grew heavier with unease as whispers traveled between delegates like ripples across dark water. The insectoid Kether representative bent his spindly legs and clicked his mandibles nervously, while a scaled envoy from the Drava clutched the table with trembling claws and spoke in a hushed voice that carried despite his effort to remain discreet. He said the human's words reminded him of stories whispered on the front lines about entire battalions of his people, being erased not by fleets, but by small groups of humans who fought with savage persistence. Another delegate from the Avian, Kel, spread his wings in agitation and added that he had seen recordings of human combat, where their soldiers refused to fall even after wounds that would have felled warriors of any other species. The Zalthar commander who had asked the original question bared his teeth in frustration as he tried to maintain authority. He dismissed the murmurs as myths exaggerated by soldiers desperate to excuse their own failures, but his voice lacked the conviction it carried earlier. Everyone in the chamber could see the unease behind his eyes, and the human sitting chained in the center remained silent, watching their arguments unravel with the patience of a predator waiting for prey to reveal its weakness. An older envoy from the Sarathi rose from his seat, his long robe sweeping the floor as he recounted reports he had personally reviewed during campaigns near the edge of human territory. He spoke of settlements that fought against invasion with improvised weapons, turning mining drills into artillery, and turning hunting rifles into precision snipers that brought down armored walkers. He described how entire families fought together, side by side, and how invaders had expected an easy conquest, but instead faced resistance so fierce that their fleets withdrew with more casualties than victories. His words carried weight because they were not rumors but official reports that had been filed and quietly buried to protect the pride of galactic powers. The human finally spoke again, his tone quiet, but sharp enough to pierce every word spoken before. He said that those stories were not myths nor exaggerations but the truth of his people. He said humans came from a world that tried to kill them every day through storms, volcanoes, predators, disease, and still they endured and adapted. When aliens believed they could break humanity, they only reminded humans of what they had always known, that survival demanded struggle, and struggle forged strength. The chamber fell silent again as his words reached even those who had laughed at humanity's arrival among the stars. The Zalthar commander attempted to regain control, demanding to know if humans gloried in bloodshed, if they truly believed themselves superior to every other race. The Marine's expression hardened and his voice grew colder as he replied that humans did not glory in death, but in survival. He said his kill count was not a badge of honor, but a shadow that followed him each life, taken weighing heavily, but each also a reminder that surrender meant extinction, and extinction was not something humanity would accept. His eyes locked with the Zalthar commanders, and the alien looked away first, breaking the unspoken contest of will. Among the delegates, a murmur grew into a conversation that could no longer be ignored. Some whispered that humanity was dangerous, beyond measure a species too wild to be allowed free. Others argued that such danger made them invaluable allies, for no other species possessed such resilience. The tension pulled the chamber in two directions, fear and respect, and both pointed toward one conclusion: that humanity could never again be dismissed as fragile newcomers. The Marine leaned forward, chains rattling softly, as he said he was only one soldier among many, and that if the council feared his count, they should pray they never faced an entire human army. His voice carried no boast, only truth, and the memory of battles burned into him. At that moment, many in the chamber felt a chill deeper than the cold of space itself, for they realized that if one man could speak such words with calm certainty, then the legends of entire human divisions, shattering invasions, might not be legends at all. They might be warnings ignored until now, and the fear that gripped them would only grow stronger as the truth of humanity's strength became impossible to deny. The chamber lights dimmed as one of the council clerks activated the central display, and images flickered to life across the walls, showing fragments of battles fought at the edges of known space. The Zalthar commander had demanded proof of the human's words, and now evidence was being brought forth not from rumor, but from captured military records. The delegates leaned forward as the first image showed a barren world of ash and fire, where a squad of human Marines fought against 3 times their number of armored Zalthar soldiers. The Marines moved like predators, each action coordinated, yet driven by instinct, and though many fell, the line never broke. Reports revealed that the battle raged for days without resupply, and when finally relief forces arrived, they found the Marines still standing, their dead buried, their ammunition spent, yet their will unbroken. The council watched in silence as more images filled the chamber, each one a record of human defiance. One recording showed a human force ambushed in the frozen tundras of Archon IV. The temperature alone should have killed them, but instead, they dug trenches with their bare hands, turning the ice itself into weapons. They lured enemy walkers across frozen lakes, then detonated charges beneath the ice, swallowing machines whole. Another image showed the burning deserts of Kaltris, where human Soldiers wrapped themselves in cloth and fought through sandstorms that blinded sensors and choked engines. The enemy believed the storm would kill them, but the humans moved like shadows striking from the haze until the invaders retreated, leaving behind wrecks buried in dunes. Each record carried the same theme that no matter the environment, no matter the odds, humans adapted and endured. The Marine listened to the recounting of his kind's battles with a grim stillness. When the Zalther commander sneered and asked if he was present at those campaigns, the Marine finally answered. His voice carried the weight of memory as he spoke of worlds scarred by fire and comrades whose laughter he could still hear before the silence of death claimed them. He told of ambushes where he was the last man standing, and of nights spent alone on hostile worlds counting the stars, while wounds bled beneath the bandages he had tied himself. He told of a battle on Valar Ridge where his squad had been reduced to 3, yet they held the ridge against waves of soldiers until morning, when only he remained, his rifle empty, his knife broken, but his will still unyielding. His kill count, he said, was not measured in numbers but in ghosts who followed him in every quiet moment. The chamber grew still, as his words painted pictures more vivid than any recording. Even the hardened delegates who had seen decades of war shifted uncomfortably, for there was something different about the way he spoke. There was no arrogance in his tone, no triumph, only a heavy truth that weighed on every ear that heard it. The Zalther commander who had once mocked him now stared with narrowed eyes, but the sneer had faded, replaced by a flicker of doubt. For the first time, the council began to understand that the human before them was not simply a soldier, but a symbol of his entire species. One delegate from the aquatic Solari finally spoke, breaking the silence. She admitted that in her homeworld's waters, humans had once fought alongside her people against a pirate fleet. She remembered their lungs should not have endured the depths, yet they dived with makeshift gear, fighting with knives and harpoons, until the raiders were driven out. She said the humans were reckless, but their recklessness was guided by something deeper, a refusal to allow defeat, even when nature itself was the enemy. The Marine nodded slowly, acknowledging her words, then looked around the chamber and said that every human carried that same fire. He said they did not seek war, yet war always found them, and when it did, they learned to survive by becoming relentless. He told them his kill count was not a number to brag about, but a ledger written in blood, a record of survival forced upon him and his kind. His voice dropped lower as he admitted that every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of those he killed and those he failed to save. But still he fought, because surrender was never an option. The council could not look away. The truth was laid bare in his scars, in his voice, in the heavy silence that followed. And in that moment, more than one delegate realized that humanity's place in the galaxy would not be defined by treaties or diplomacy, but by the unshakable will of warriors like the man chained before them. It was then they began to whisper, not of myths but of inevitability. For if one soldier could speak such truths, then what would an entire army of humans unleash upon the galaxy? The council chamber grew restless as the Marine's words lingered like smoke refusing to fade from the air. Delegates shifted in their seats, whispering to one another, their eyes darting between the Zalther commander and the human bound in chains. The commander slammed a clawed fist onto the table, his voice booming, as he declared that all the humans' words were nothing more than calculated intimidation. He claimed no species could endure such horrors without breaking. No soldier could carry such a weight and still stand unshaken. Yet even as he spoke, his tone wavered, and his eyes betrayed the unease clawing at the back of his mind. He was trying not to show fear, but fear was already spreading like a contagion among the council. One by one, voices rose in protest and debate. A representative of the Drava reminded the chamber of a campaign on the frontier where 3 of their legions had marched into a human colony expecting swift conquest, only to retreat in chaos after suffering catastrophic losses. Another delegate from the Avian Kell recounted an incident where their patrols encountered human mercenaries on a supposedly uninhabitable moon. The humans had turned frozen caves into fortresses and fought so ferociously that the patrols never returned. The counselors murmured among themselves, each story feeding the growing realization that the human before them was not an anomaly, but a product of something greater. The Zalther commander snarled and accused the delegates of weakness, saying they let old battlefield scars cloud their judgment. He turned his glare back to the Marine and demanded that he admit his kill count was exaggerated. He asked the human if he truly believed he was more dangerous than the combined armies of the Galactic Council. The Marine lifted his eyes, his expression still calm, though the weight behind his words carried sharper steel than any blade. He told them that he did not need to believe it because he had already lived it. He said that for every soldier who fell beside him, there were enemies who fell tenfold. He spoke of campaigns where human units cut through forces that should have outnumbered them into extinction. His voice was quiet, but each word landed like a hammer against the fragile pride of the council. The chamber fell into silence again, but this time, it was a silence filled with dread. Several delegates looked at one another, their expressions betraying the same unspoken thought. If this was the voice of only one man, then what would the voice of an entire army sound like? The Zalthar commander shifted in his seat, his scales catching the light as he tried to mask his hesitation with a cold glare. He insisted the Marines' tales were nothing but survival luck stretched too far, but no one in the chamber seemed convinced anymore. The Marine then leaned forward as far as his chains would allow, his gaze sweeping across the gathered delegates. He told them that luck was for those who waited for fate to decide their battles, while humans made their own fate by refusing to surrender. He said his kill count meant little to him, because numbers could not capture the truth of humanity's will. He said they fought because they remembered the faces of those who depended on them, the families who waited back home, the comrades who fell beside them, and that memory gave them strength no enemy could calculate or predict. His words cut through the posturing and excuses, leaving only the raw truth hanging in the air. Some of the younger delegates could no longer meet his gaze. The insectoid Cuthar tapped their mandibles nervously, whispering that perhaps the council had been wrong to dismiss humans as primitive. The aquatic Solari envoy folded her hands together, her voice soft but firm, as she reminded the chamber that she had seen humans bleed and suffer, yet still keep fighting until the sea itself turned red. Her words gave weight to the Marine's testimony, and the fear in the chamber grew sharper. The Zalthar commander tried one last attempt to reclaim control by declaring that humans were reckless beasts who burned everything they touched. He argued that such creatures could never shape the galaxy, only destroy it. The Marine raised his head, and with a voice low but unwavering, said that sometimes destruction was necessary when it meant survival. He told them that humans had been underestimated since the moment they stepped into the stars, and that every underestimation had been paid for in alien blood. He did not smile. He did not raise his voice. He only spoke with the certainty of one who had lived it, and the truth struck deeper than any speech could have. When the chamber fell silent once more, the fear was no longer hidden. Delegates avoided. The humans' eyes and whispers turned into uneasy silence. The Zalthar commander looked around for support, but found only shifting gazes and clenched jaws. For the first time, it was not the human who seemed trapped in the chamber, but the council itself, bound by the weight of its own realization that they faced a predator they could neither cage nor dismiss. And in that silence, the seeds of doubt and terror grew roots in the hearts of every alien present. The air inside the council chamber seemed heavy, as if the weight of the human's words pressed down upon every delegate present. No one moved for several long moments until the eldest among the Valar stood from his place, his long silver tendrils swaying as he spoke in a voice filled with resignation rather than defiance. He reminded the chamber that humanity's strength did not come from technology alone, nor from numbers, but from something deeper that no empire had managed to quantify. He spoke of adaptability, of a will that turned even weakness into advantage, and it was this doctrine of war that terrified him more than fleets or weapons. His words drew murmurs of agreement from some delegates, while others tried to deny them, but no one could erase the shadow that had settled over the chamber. The Zalthar commander snapped at the Valar elder, demanding that he stop spreading fear and focus on facts, but the elder only raised his head higher and gestured toward the chained Marine. He said the facts were sitting right there, staring them in the eye, and if they chose not to listen, then history would carve their arrogance into monuments of failure. The Zalthar commander hissed, but offered no further argument, and the human Marine finally broke his silence once again. His voice was measured and steady as he explained what the council had refused to accept for years. He told them that humanity's war doctrine was not built on superior ships or endless resources because Earth never had such luxuries. Instead, it was built on survival and creativity. He said that when a human soldier faced the battlefield, he carried within him 1,000 years of wars fought on a planet that never gave them peace. Every environment from burning deserts to frozen tundras, from mountains that reached the sky to oceans deeper than light could travel, had shaped humanity into what it was. Where other species trained for specific conditions, humans had already lived them. Where others waited for technology to guide them, humans relied on instinct, sharpened by hardship. The Marine continued describing how humans turned everything into a weapon. A shattered vehicle became cover. A jagged stone became a blade. A simple, chemical compound became fire capable of driving back armored foes. He told them of battles where ammunition had run dry, yet victory still belonged to the humans, because surrender was never considered. He described soldiers breaking apart their own gear to build traps and civilians arming themselves with tools and sheer determination. The delegates listened in silence as his words painted a doctrine unlike any they had studied, one that was not written in manuals, but in the very blood of his species. A delegate from the crystalline Erith spoke softly, admitting that their kind had once dismissed humans as reckless for their tendency to improvise in combat. Now he realized that this recklessness was not carelessness but a form of genius that allowed humans to exploit every weakness and every opportunity. Another delegate from the insectoid Cather nodded, adding that they had fought humans in tunnels, beneath fractured worlds where visibility was nearly non-existent. The humans had thrived in the darkness while Cather warriors stumbled, despite having evolved in subterranean hives. They had lost entire units to a handful of humans who used the environment itself as their ally. The Zalthar commander tried to interject, claiming that such tactics proved desperation, not strength, but his words rang hollow. The Marine turned his gaze on him and calmly explained that desperation was simply another word for determination when survival was at stake. He said that humans had learned to thrive in desperation because it was their constant companion. When the world crumbled, they rebuilt. When enemies outnumbered them, they fought harder. When weapons failed, they made new ones from nothing. His voice was cold, but every syllable carried truth that pierced through the chamber like a spear. The aquatic Solari envoy whispered that such a doctrine could never be defeated, because no empire could prepare for an enemy that saw every situation as a potential path to victory. The Marine inclined his head in acknowledgement and told her that this was the essence of humanity's strength. He told them his kill count did not matter compared to the truth that every human carried this fire within them. He was not unique, he said. He was simply a reflection of what waited on Earth. If the galaxy ever forced his people into a war of survival, they would discover that the count would not belong to one Marine but to an entire species. The chamber fell into silence again, but it was not the silence of disbelief as before. Now it was the silence of realization, the kind that came when fear finally gave way to understanding. The delegates looked to one another, and for the first time many wondered, not if humanity could be contained, but if they had already doomed themselves by trying. And though the Zalthar commander still sat with clenched fists, his eyes betrayed the truth. He no longer believed his own denials. The doctrine of humanity had been laid bare before them, and the galaxy would never see humans the same way again. The silence of the chamber did not last long, for the Zalthar commander finally slammed his claws on the table and ordered the human to be removed, claiming that the council had wasted enough time on the delusions of a single prisoner. Guards moved forward clad in heavy armor and carrying plasma pikes, but the human did not flinch. He simply watched them approach with the same calm expression that had unsettled the council since the moment he spoke. The chains rattled as they bent down to release him from the chair, intending to drag him back to confinement. But in that moment, the chamber bore witness to the truth of everything he had said. With a sudden motion, the Marine twisted his body, using the chain itself as a weapon. The guard closest to him fell before he could even react. His helmet cracked against the floor. In the confusion, the human moved with precision, not rage, his actions sharp and deliberate like a predator that had studied its prey. The delegates cried out in alarm, and the Zalthar commander shouted for reinforcements, but the Marine was already in motion. He disarmed one soldier with a swift strike, and within seconds the plasma pike meant to restrain him was in his hands. He turned the weapon against his captors, and each strike reminded the council of the stories they had once dismissed as exaggeration. The alien guards tried to encircle him, but the human anticipated their movements before they made them. He fought, not with wild strength but with practiced efficiency, conserving energy, striking only when it mattered. The crystalline Irith delegate whispered in disbelief that the Marine was calculating the battlefield in real time, turning the chamber itself into an arena. Every surface became a shield, every chain a weapon, every shadow a chance to disappear and reappear where no one expected. In mere minutes, the guards who had been trained to subdue any prisoner lay scattered across the floor, groaning in defeat. The Marine did not run immediately. Instead, he turned toward the council and spoke again, his voice steady despite the chaos. He told them that what they had witnessed was not unusual, that every human soldier was trained to adapt to any circumstance, and that the chains they thought would restrain him had only become another tool in his hands. He said that this was the essence of humanity, that everything could be turned into a weapon, and that no cage could ever hold his kind for long. His words were not shouted, they were delivered calmly, yet they carried more weight than the sound of any battle outside the chamber walls. Alarms blared as reinforcements rushed toward the chamber, but the Marine was already moving. He shattered the locks on the doors and slipped through the smoke of battle like a ghost. Security drones swarmed the corridors, yet each one fell as he used stolen weapons and improvised tactics to dismantle them one by one. Delegates watched through surveillance screens in shock as he fought his way through the most fortified building in the heart of the galactic capital. The Solari envoy whispered that she had seen this before in the seas of her world when a predator, once thought trapped, found a way to turn the entire ocean into its hunting ground. Now the Marine was showing them the same truth on a scale they could not deny. The Zalthar commander shouted orders to capture him alive, but his voice betrayed desperation. The more the Marine advanced, the more it became clear that they were powerless to stop him. Every squad dispatched to intercept him returned broken or not at all. The halls that had once represented power and order now echoed with the sounds of defeat and fear. The delegates who remained in the chamber sat in stunned silence, realizing that they had underestimated the human even while staring directly at him. As the Marine reached the outer doors of the council hall, he paused long enough to deliver a message through the captured comm system. His voice carried across every frequency and into every corner of the city. He said that he was only one man, yet he had walked into the center of their power bound in chains and had walked out free. He told them to imagine what would happen if Earth ever sent its armies not in chains but in strength. He said that the galaxy would not have to count the dead by planets but by stars. Then he stepped into the night, disappearing into the labyrinth of the city, leaving behind only silence and fear. Inside the chamber, the delegates could no longer argue. They had seen with their own eyes what humanity was capable of, and they knew the stories were not legends but warnings. The Zalthar commander sat slumped in his seat, his confidence shattered as he realized that even if they caught the Marine again, it would not change what had been revealed. Humanity was not to be mocked nor underestimated. Humanity was to be feared. And as the alarms continued to echo through the capital, the council understood that this escape was not the end, but the beginning of something far greater. The city outside the council hall buzzed with chaos as alarms rang through the towering spires, and patrol ships roared across the skies, searching for the escaped prisoner. Crowds of civilians scattered in fear, unsure of what had truly happened inside the chamber. But whispers were already spreading faster than official reports could suppress them. The human Marine had broken his chains and walked free through the most secure complex in the galaxy. Stories exaggerated by frightened witnesses claimed he had cut through entire squads with his bare hands, and that no weapon could pierce his skin. Fear distorted into myth, and myth hardened into truth in the minds of the people. The council's own silence only made the rumors stronger. Inside the emergency chamber, the delegates gathered once again, their faces pale with unease. The Zalthar commander sat hunched in his seat, his claws digging into the table as he tried to speak with authority, but his voice no longer carried the same weight. He demanded that fleets be dispatched to hunt the human and that every colony suspected of harboring his kind be monitored. Yet even as he spoke, the other delegates no longer looked at him with respect. Instead, their gazes were filled with suspicion and doubt. For the first time in his career, the Zalthar commander realized that his power was slipping away, not to rivals but to fear of the very species he had once mocked. The Solari envoy stood and addressed the chamber, her voice calm though. Her eyes betrayed the storm of thoughts within her. She said they could no longer treat humanity as an insignificant threat because the evidence of their resilience was undeniable. She reminded the chamber of the battles they had witnessed, of the settlements that resisted fleets, and of the Marines' escape that proved no prison could hold a determined human. She asked them a question that none wanted to answer directly. If this was the strength of one soldier, what would happen if Earth unleashed millions? The chamber fell into uneasy silence because the answer needed no words. Meanwhile, the human Marine moved through the undercity of the galactic capital, slipping into shadows that swallowed him whole. The alleys were filled with smugglers and mercenaries, and yet none dared stop him. They could feel the aura of danger around him, the same aura that silenced soldiers and unsettled seasoned warriors. In every step he carried the weight of his past battles and the promise of more to come. He found a quiet chamber deep underground where he accessed stolen communication arrays and prepared his message. He knew the council would chase him across the stars, but he also knew fear had already done his work for him. The transmission spread across systems before the council could block it. His voice echoed through every frequency, calm, steady, and unshaken. He told the galaxy that he had not escaped to save himself but to deliver a warning. He said humanity was not an empire seeking conquest, but a species that would never kneel. He said they did not measure war in victories or defeats, but in survival, and that survival made them unstoppable. He reminded them that if they counted his kills, then they must also count the billions of times humans refused to fall to extinction on their homeworld. His final words rang like steel across the void. "You wanted to know my count," he said. "Now count the stars above you, because if you force Earth to rise in war, then that is what you will lose." The message spread faster than fleets could move. Across the galaxy, soldiers whispered of the human who defied the council. Civilians repeated his words until they became legend. Empires that had once dismissed Earth began to reconsider alliances and rivalries. Some saw opportunity to gain humanity as an ally. Others trembled at the thought of standing against them. In every corner of the galaxy, the Marine's name became a symbol not of terror alone, but of respect and inevitability. The galaxy had learned fear, but it had also learned that fear was not enough to break humanity. Back in the council chamber, the delegates argued bitterly, some demanding immediate retaliation, others urging caution. Yet beneath their words, all shared the same thought. Humanity had revealed its true face, and nothing would erase what had been shown. The Zalthar commander tried once more to rally support for war, but few answered his call. For in their hearts, they knew that to declare war against Earth was to invite their own destruction. The balance of power had shifted, and not through fleets or treaties, but through the defiance of one Marine who spoke for an entire world. Far beyond the capital, the human Marine boarded a smuggler's vessel, disappearing into the stars. He looked out across the endless void and for the first time allowed himself a faint smile. He had carried the weight of his kill count across countless battles, but now he understood that his true weapon was not the numbers carved into his memory. His true weapon was the truth he had shown the galaxy, that humanity could not be broken. And as the stars stretched before him, he knew the council would never forget the day they asked a simple question and received an answer that changed the galaxy forever. The smuggler's vessel drifted into the blackness of space, its engines a soft hum against the silence of the void. Inside the narrow cabin, the human Marine sat alone, his chains long discarded, but the weight of memory still heavy upon him. His eyes traced the endless sweep of stars, each one a reminder of the words he had spoken to the council, and the truth that now spread like wildfire across the galaxy. They had asked his kill count expecting fear or arrogance, yet what they received was something they could never erase. He had given them a glimpse into the heart of humanity, and in that glimpse they saw a species that could not be broken. On distant worlds, whispers already carried his name. Miners in colonies retold the tale with awe, saying one man had walked into the council in chains and walked out free. Soldiers preparing for the next campaign repeated his words as a mantra, drawing courage from the certainty that they belonged to a people who never surrendered. Even among enemies who had once mocked Earth, there grew a quiet dread, for they realized they had underestimated not just a soldier, but an entire species that thrived on adversity. Fear had spread, but so had respect, and both together reshaped the balance of the stars. The council sat in disarray, unable to decide whether to pursue open war or retreat into silence. The Zalthar commander still roared for vengeance, but his words rang hollow, for no fleet could erase the memory of what they had seen. The Marine had broken their strongest guards with nothing but his will and their own tools turned against them. If one soldier could turn their council hall into a battlefield, then what could armies of his kind do to their empires? This question haunted every delegate, and no answer brought them peace. They had sought to cage a predator, but instead, they had revealed the iron truth that predators were born of Earth. The Marine's gaze lingered on the stars as the ship carried him farther from the capital. He thought of his comrades, long fallen, their voices etched in memory, their faces living in the silence between battles. His kill count was not glory, it was grief, yet it had become a message louder than any fleet could deliver. He had told the galaxy that humanity did not count victories in numbers but in survival, and survival was the greatest weapon of all. For every star above him, he knew there was a story of humans who had endured storms, hunger war, and still refused to bow. That refusal was what the Council had witnessed, and it was what the galaxy would never forget. The smuggler's vessel slipped into the faster currents of hyperspace, leaving the capital behind. The Marine closed his eyes for a moment, not in rest, but in remembrance. He knew more battles lay ahead and that the Council would not stop hunting him, but he also knew their fear had already planted seeds across the stars. Empires would hesitate before striking Earth again, and in hesitation humanity would find room to grow stronger. His message had already done more than any weapon could. It had turned one man's defiance into the voice of a species. The galaxy had asked for his kill count, but numbers could not capture what he carried. What they feared was not the count of the dead, but the unyielding truth of the living. And as the stars rushed past the viewport, he whispered to himself the promise that humanity would never break, never kneel, never vanish. It was not just his vow, it was Earth's vow written in every scar and every survival. The end.